Eat it. Oxygen. Why we Hey everyone, welcome to the Grit Files. I am your hostess, Loralyn Mears, and we're here sponsored by Grit Daily with a really exciting fellow Canuck. So that's never a bad thing, but he's calling in from LA today. Mikey Perez is a journalist and serial entrepreneur, as well as a software engineer. He's got loads of tips and ideas and just plans to help all of the listeners out there who are in the startup space and thinking about how do I tackle that? So with that, let's welcome Mikey to the show. Hey, Mikey.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, we like everybody that's trying to dabble in this space that has gone to the school of hard knocks, overcome whatever difficulties, moved on, found a way to get beyond whatever was holding them back and achieve success, and then has that vision on how to keep going. Lifelong learners. From what I understand, you've done a lot of things that have been self-taught on everything from deep coding to some of the journalism efforts. Maybe tell us a little bit about that, how you came to be in this position as a serial everything.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. Just one small point there in terms of coding specifically. I went to school for that for 4 years, but I have been doing building computers before that since the age of 9. So, how it all started, I think it's really a deep underlying curiosity. Even my environment in which I grew up in didn't expose me to any science or secular related topics. So growing up in an Orthodox Jewish community, I was always fascinated by computers, and I made my room my sanctuary. Essentially, I would just build computers from there on my own. I would, buy Wi-Fi keys and start looking at neighbors' routers and try to get in and try to explore the world through there. But it really is just a fundamental level of curiosity. And I think that's something that's just deeply inside someone. And the second they get any exposure to something that makes them curious, it's just a pull towards it. So I started off in a religious Jewish home. I went to school. In elementary school, I was diagnosed with ADHD. So that's kind of where having to operate in an environment that really worked to my disadvantage begun, and it built my skills. It taught me in a very subtle way how to build confidence off that well-worn path. So one after the other, I constantly started having a better track record of doing things contrary to what I'm being told. And that made me really comfortable taking bigger risks, at least today.
Let's talk about that, because so many of the guests we have on the Grit Files have overcome whatever level of adversity. We've had some of the most successful conflict managers who lived in their car with 2 kids for several years, to being, an MIT and Harvard MBA grad. So you never know where things are going. Talk to us a little bit about that, being on the neurodivergent side of the house, and how you had to work hard to overcome all of that so that you can not only find success in life, but the pursuit that you actually took, software engineering, software development, is all based on mathematics and all of the things that typically can be challenging when you're learning as a child. So talk to us about that experience.
Right. So I think it's the moments that people shy away from, or I think are the greatest losses. I almost became addicted to those moments where I had to learn so much in such a short period of time. So, for example, when I did graduate high school and I did start to pursue computer science, believe it or not, doing technical work like building computers had no crossover in the realm of the intangible stuff like coding and zeros and ones. So these, from the outside, these two fields like hardware and software look kind of almost like one of the same, but they're extremely different skill sets and an extremely separate knowledge base. So when I entered Dawson College to start pursuing computer science, I knew absolutely nothing. But even more so, I knew nothing about mathematics. I was barely able to do algebra, and now I'm in a Cal 1 course. Those moments would generally crush people. For whatever reason, I kind of felt the need to prove it to myself. And it's those moments that actually gave me something that I'm addicted to. I'm addicted to those moments where just nothing else matters. I have this problem right in front of me. It's immense, and I have a short period of time to solve it. And once you do that 1 or 2 times, there's a certain sense of the reward is not necessarily, what you've accomplished, but it's that confidence you get to start taking on really big projects and knowing that there's somehow always a solution. You just need to fight hard enough and you'll get there, one way or the other. It might not be the solution you think you have now, but as you gain more knowledge throughout the journey, you do start to pivot and you're comfortable with moving away and adjusting constantly, and you get there, even if you're alone on this journey. And very often it's kind of the stuff that I pursue, even graduating college, making peanuts for years while all my friends went into big tech, Amazon, Facebook. I still decided to build an empire, at least something that I found of my own. And it's that drive in you that just constantly replicates itself forward.
And talk to us about that drive. Is it the intention and deep desire to prove something to yourself and to others? Or are you pulled along? You said at the beginning of the show that there's these forces, right? You can talk about the universe, you can talk about the guiding hand, you can, whatever metaphor that you want to talk about, but that something inside you compels to move forward despite the adversity, despite the setbacks, despite the hell of doing it. What is that for you?
So two things here. First of all, I don't necessarily say that this mode of operation is the best one or a better one than someone else might choose. I really don't. I'm quite indifferent. For some, let's take a slight step back here and talk about, taking the entrepreneurial route or, working for a stable job and have 9-to-5 income. I really don't see one as better than the other. In fact, if someone is predisposed or hardwired for finding security, stability, the kind of person that's comfortable with saying, and you message them at 5:00 p.m. on a Friday afternoon saying, oh, I don't have access to my work mail, I'll respond to you Monday morning, right? There are those people. For me, I don't know what that means, right? I work every day of the week. I don't even know what day it is half the time. There's no such thing as working hours. My personal life, my work life is highly interchanged. Anyways, the point I'm making here is that it's what fundamentally makes us happy, right? If I were to find a 9-to-5 job and get that stability with the vacation hours, or I look forward to vacation and all that cool stuff, I would be miserable. I just wouldn't be happy. It looks like in life we think we have choices, but for whatever reason, every single day I wake up and I'm willing to take a series of transactions that if you were to just evaluate them on paper, it would just look like a really bad deal every time. But for whatever reason, that's what makes me happy. So where I'm going with this is that a part of it is genetic. It's just how you're wired. It's just what makes you tick. It's not what's better than the other, and it's not even a choice. So for people who are happy with their jobs, I would say continue doing your 9-to-5. For people who feel like there's something bigger, for people who want to do something beyond just making money, and for some people who have a strong vision and are willing to give up a lot because you give up a lot to pursue your vision, to really be an entrepreneur and to be a successful one. Not that I am there, I hope to get there. My journey is always ahead of me. But for people who really do want to do something really good, there's no way around it. It will cost your personal life. It will cost a ton. So, I know that's a long answer, but I do want to say that so I think personally that I never looked at it. I had to take years to realize, oh, wow, I really had issues as kids. And as a kid, ADHD was really bad and all this stuff. But I personally think that no matter what situation you put me through, I would have probably taken the same approach. It's, and I don't even take credit for it. It's just who I am. It's You're
that moth drawn to the flame, right?
Yeah, exactly. Precisely.
Yeah, I got it. And your words resonated.
Yeah. And to people who do resonate with what I'm saying, you need to start asking yourself, what's the way out, right? So if you resonate with what I'm saying in the sense that you're like, hey, I have this 9-to-5 job, right? But I really want to pursue entrepreneurship. But easy for you to say, Mike, right? You don't have to pay the rent this month, right? You don't have 4 kids. And a lot of that is true, right? But nevertheless, this is the trap. This is the bureaucratic trap, right? When you graduate college and you see this like opportunity to start at $120K working at Amazon, it's a trap. It really is, because you're paid to forget about your dreams. Now that you're in that trap, right, and you've built a lifestyle around it, you have something called survival costs, right? Your strategy simply needs to be to reduce those survival costs, to actually really take everything you pay for, put it in a bin, and what's absolutely essential and what you can survive without. And you want to ask me what you need to survive without, you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to give up to pursue this entrepreneurial dream? Do you value your 12 hours of sleep? Do you value your 8 hours of sleep? Do you like your beautiful apartment? Are you willing to move back with your mom? It doesn't sound really cool to your friends, but really, how much do you want? Everyone wants to be successful, right? How much do you want it? So for those who do feel what, who did resonate with what I've just said, make a list, reduce your survival costs to as low as possible, right? Now you finish work at what, 6 p.m., 7 p.m.? You have way more time than you think. You have 5 hours a night to start honing in a secondary craft. And we exist in this world where everything is at your fingertips. So you can go on Google, you can go on YouTube, you can start learning how to become a programmer, a graphic designer, and you can start pursuing careers that are untangible, right? And this gives you a lot of degrees of freedom where you can move to different places. You have a lot more flexibility to take control of your future. And you give yourself 1 year, and that's your exit strategy where you start moving all your dependencies from your 9 to 5 into something more entrepreneurial. Long answer, but yeah, that.
But highly powerful. I love that you said that those, big jobs really become that gilded cage. And it's that gilded cage. I love how you phrased it, that you're paid to forget about your dreams. And as someone who's on the flip side of that, who gave up all of that to pursue an entrepreneurial path as well, I've gone all in the other way. I have burned the boats, Mikey, burned them. There is no turning back.
Very good. And you're happier making a quarter of the salary because it's about the model you subscribe to. When you work even for high tech, like let's just pick the best company. Let's just say you work for Google, right? It depends on where your dreams are. If you're happy making 400K a year with tenure, and that's great, but you don't subscribe to that potential exponential model of growth. You kind of hit linear and then you kind of flatline at some point, right? People aren't making, your average person, even with a high level job at Google, is not making 5 million a year, 4 million a year. They're just not. When you start as an entrepreneur, you make pennies on the dollar. You make pennies for a very long time. For 2, 3, 4 years, you make nothing. You live on a couch. You eat chickpeas every day. This is what I did. I eat chickpeas every day. Canned chickpeas is my favorite. I still eat them today, But when you hit that inflection point, you just gotta have that patience. And you hit that inflection point, and then you start seeing ROI. That's when you look back, you're like, oh wow, right? I would do that 1,000 times over again.
That's worth it. Now, let's flip things around. So you've talked to us about how you are the moth drawn to the flame and you're just pulled forward and compelled to do all of these things despite anything holding you back and going for it, which is amazing. What if I gave you an undo button and I said, you got to hit this once and you get to change one thing personally or professionally?
That's good. Very good question. It's a very good question. Very good question. I would press that undo button on one thing. It's really easy to look back. That's the truth. I do felt I spent way more time than I should have doing a specific type of web development service. So it first started off where we were just making nitty gritty websites out of the box. And I got really complacent in that environment. And if I had to go back in time, I would have pivoted just about 1.5 years earlier. Because the moment I made that pivot, right, and we started diversifying our types of services, things really took off quickly. And it kind of led us to a whole new demographic. And it's been a quick series of steps right after. Now, I think it's been great. I don't think I moved too slowly, but if I had to look back and say, hey, where can I optimize? It would be that point. And I really do think that complacency factor is the death of you, especially when you're in a competitive environment, in a tech-based environment or digital environment, because your area of competition is so much broader, right? You're not servicing something, not like brick and mortar where you're competing with a local environment. You're competing with a world environment. And the moment it's like this mindset where the moment you get very comfortable with PHP or a specific language, like it's really easy to say, hey, I want to stick with what I know. I'm not interested in constantly learning a new language every 2-3 months. But that's how you survive in this industry. You have to be entirely comfortable with completely tearing down and rebuilding, because every time it's just a little better. And the models you build are designed for the environment you operate in. You can scale those models, but at some point it just makes more sense to tear them down for your new context. So it's just this matter of just never getting too excited, of being stubborn, never getting too complacent, is being very stubborn and knowing when to be really stubborn, knowing when to give up on something. These are skills that you learn from trial and error.
We've made you look back and be retrospective there. Let's turn things in the other direction. What's compelling you forward? What are some of the next things on the horizon that you're comfortable sharing?
Right. Yeah, sure. So it all started in my basement, making websites. And then we started doing cloud computing, hosting services. Then we started doing more representation for individuals, a lot of search engine optimization. We started doing Scale My Publication, where we help build publication companies from the very start up to seed stage. And now we're kind of offering a variety of services for podcast hosts as well. Now, once all these independent entities are self-sustained, highly efficient, fully operational, I plan on leveraging that technical know-how, and we've got people who are trained really well to start looking at other companies and saying, hey, we can jump into your situation. We can decrease your cost tremendously. We can increase your output. We understand the tech industry really well. We have all the tools and infrastructure. We have all the services ready to go from everything, from A to Z. So where I see this going, I think we'll have a unique advantage in the investment space. So specifically tech startups, where we could vet startups effectively with a strong tech background, with a strong low-level tech background for about 15 years. And even more so, we can step in there and we can do two things, right? We can invest, but we can also optimize and take over the internal infrastructure. So the next immediate milestone for the next 2 to 3 years will probably be along that direction.
One of the things that I've noticed with you just in the short time that we've had conversation is your ability to frame things, how you think about things, right? This is the beauty of having different perspectives, different backgrounds, neurodivergence versus the standard and linear way of thinking. So with that, when you think about all of the things that have thrown you for a loop as a serial entrepreneur, what do entrepreneurs not think about? And what do they not know that's probably coming? Because I think that would be powerful advice for the listenership here.
Right. A few things. First and foremost, I think it's priorities in your early days. It comes back to that point where, these are all a series of just tiny but small correct decisions that I think lead you to a really good place. And not that I've done them all correctly, but I am somewhat observant of that. And, it's very easy to be tied into the corporate bubble. So for example, you just finished college, you're hungry, everyone around you is looking for really good jobs, right? You're in debt and all that stuff. Your priorities are important. You should focus a lot more on becoming a master of your trade, honing your skills, and learning how to give value to others rather than finding a way for you to get. And I think the biggest mistake entrepreneurs, and I wouldn't even say entrepreneurs because I think everyone's an entrepreneur internally. I think the biggest mistake that people who are looking to build a career for themselves make is that they have the wrong priorities from the start. I don't think you should focus on making money. I think money should be a byproduct of a stellar service, doing something absolutely wonderful. And you do want to find yourself in a place where you can offer services to people that your competitors simply can't. And that comes when you really have something you truly love and you have a unique personality and perspective towards it.
What's your kryptonite, Mikey? What takes you out at the knees?
I think anxiety does a little bit. It's overwhelming sometimes. It's kind of like, I love to hate it. I hate when I'm anxious, and I'm getting a lot more control over it. But at the same time, it is an underlying driving force sometimes. Like being really stressed sucks, but it just gets the problem solved because it's like this driving force that just gets me to do nothing and focus on it. I think I need to learn how to balance things better a little bit too. When you're so focused on getting somewhere, you're constantly optimizing, and then you don't realize that you have to look a little more macro and realize that the things you might be compromising to, like, taking away from so you get more to achieve your goal overall is just not good. Where you still want to have more of a personal life. I used to have a pretty strong personal life, a lot less so now, just because there's so much cool stuff going on and I'm so excited to pursue it. I'm the only guy. Like last night, I was at a bar with my laptop out, right, till closing time at 1:45 a.m. I do that all the time. I'm used to it, but the way, like, the bartender came up to me yesterday and she's like, you look really weird on the side of your laptop. I'm like, I know. And, it gave me just for a moment, a frame of reference of like, just a little bit of an outside perspective, realize like, hey, this is not a normal lifestyle. It's so normal to me because it's all I do. It's just who I am. But, I still have to, the point I'm trying to make here is, I wouldn't say kryptonite, but I would say that one of the things that I have to improve on is learning how to scale up pretty complex and demanding systems at the same time, having enough time to appreciate the things that make us human.
That's a tall order. That may be more difficult than, right, building the next algorithm or next funky website. But you raise a really good point. It's wonderful that you have this deep level of introspection, because that's an ability that so many people don't have, or then they don't choose to hone it. They have no level of self-awareness and no desire to have it. So you've got a capacity for deep introspection, but to get that little external nudge.
Yeah. I'm constantly critical of myself. I'm never happy. Like, I always like, there's so much room to make. So I guess maybe that leads to.
Well, I mean, that's one way to look at it, but I was going to say that it's great to have that, but it's also, I think, really healthy to have those external perturbations and nudges to move you along. Like you said, that outside perspective from that bartender, everybody's going to define what is normal, what is this, what is acceptable, what is not, what boundary is within, off limits, all of that sort of stuff. We're all different. But sometimes it is nice to have that outsider's purview and go, oh, that's a different way to think about things. Let me have a think about that now. And so I think that's great that our audience got to hear that from you.
100% agree. Even if you've got a completely different perspective on life than someone, there's still high value nuggets of information that can, it's more like we all see life through a specific lens, and that lens has certain filters on it. When you get information from someone else's lens, it's not even about objectivity of being right or wrong. It's more about, how that information might be of value to your life. So, she has a different set of priorities. She has a different set of interests. Mm-hmm. So I don't expect her to do what I do, but at the same time, she has found little ways to operate that make her more effective in her space, or even philosophical thoughts. And I tend to take those really seriously. It's why I like opinions from people who I don't relate to at all. I used to take Tinder dates intentionally with people who I know I have nothing in common with, because they're stuck with me for about an hour. And I get to learn as much as I can from them. So yeah, I agree with that.
And since you're a journalist, I'm very curious about this, how you'll answer this question. If you had an opportunity to create a headline, Mikey Perez is, was, did, does, whatever verb tense in that you want to use, what's your headline?
Really good question. Is it weird that I don't know how to answer that?
No, I've asked it to a couple of people who have also been in media and journalists. And even though this is what we all do on a regular basis, it's really hard when you turn a question back on yourself. And my intention is not to catch people off guard and do that kind of thing. It's just
not at all.
To think about it in a different way and bring that to the audience, because people have commented in that have heard different episodes that where I've asked it and said, wow, I want to think about that, because then I can work backwards to it, to what my success and what my goal is when they've struggled trying to figure out where they want to go.
I have a very vague vision. It's really grandiose, but I really do plan on pursuing biomedical engineering, or creating an I want to do something truly fundamental. And I think that everything I'm doing now will either leverage me in terms of resources or in terms of network to that destination. So ultimately, what I really want to do, which has nothing to do with any of this, is to do research in human aging. And it perhaps does. Maybe I'll find a biotech startup that is pursuing that path. And it's precisely where, remember I was telling you before this podcast, before you turn on the recorder, I was telling you how you don't really know where you're going, but you're very confident that you're getting there. Perhaps even subconsciously, I don't realize this, but I want to head into VC. I want to head into tech investments, because I do want to find a startup that's doing something truly monumental and decide to be an actual part of it. So I'm taking biomedical courses still on the side. I'm still learning stuff because I do want to work with human aging. That is really where my passion is. But I want to do something truly amazing that's not just about making money, that actually has a shift on the way the world works, right? I'm nowhere near there. And I constantly feel like I'm heading down this rabbit hole where the more I'm expanding my reach of knowledge, the less I'm sure about exactly what I want to do, right? I was so sure as a kid, I want to be a software engineer. Like I was so sure of it. You can, if you had told me that you would fall in love with biology or even mathematics, I would tell you, you don't even know me. So, like, but the person you know the least is truly yourself. And so I'm learning like my passion for computer science was really just a subset. It was true, it was genuine, but it was a subset of something greater. I don't necessarily love computer science for computer science as a programmer. I love computer science because it's such an effective communication tool with science, right? And it took me a while to realize that there was a broader spectrum here of interests. And now that I'm exploring that spectrum, it's constantly becoming broader and broader. But the things I hated the most are the things that I end up finding myself doing. I was learning disabled in mathematics, right? I ended up majoring in mathematics. I double majors. I did computer science and mathematics. I was told I was learning disabled in math. I hated biology. I found it just like a waste of my time. And now I'm just completely in love with it. So, I think at the end of the day, if you ask me to describe myself, I do have a hard time doing that because it changes so quickly. And yeah, but I would say that I'm fundamentally curious. I would say that I tend to like not give in to normalcy as much as the average person, at least what I see. So, someone who's supposed to be a little more mature, I'm in my 30s now, early 30s. I'm still have like a mindset of someone who's going in their first day in college, right? And the second I don't feel like I have that level, that delta in my life in terms of that rate of change of how much I have absorbed on a given day, the second I realize that I'm subscribing more to patterns and redundant work as opposed to in the space where you're just uncomfortable learning something new, I'm uncomfortable doing that. So the second I look in the mirror too many days in a row and I'm like, hey, you're not in the college level mindset, that those moments where I had to like learn calculus in 2-3 months, that feeling once you're done that exam and you leave with a really high grade and you're like, whoa, I learned so much in such a short period of time. Imagine I was like this all the time. It's that touch that I got then, if I don't constantly feel it again, I know I'm heading in the wrong direction.
You've got an insatiable appetite for learning. That's what I would say is your headline. Mikey Perez, insatiable
Thank you.
appetite for learning. That's how I kind of ticket you. And on the topic of aging, Craig Ventnor's had the Center for Human Aging and all of those kinds of studies. So you should look him up and what he's done. And I've kind of lost track in the last couple of years, but some amazing progress there on that end. So let's flip things around. How can our audience help you, or is there something you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I love connecting. Well, how can my audience help me? Well, I appreciate that, but I hope I can help my audience in this story, not necessarily in a direct way, right? You don't have to have ADHD, but if you can relate to that, to being held back a little bit, I think those are good moments. I think you should swim in the pain and become and be willing. I look at it as like, how do people adjust to problems? I think that's a very strong differentiating factor. Some people let it crush them, and some people leverage that momentum and just lunge themselves in a different direction. They kill the identity of their old selves, and they come out so much stronger as someone different. I hope if I can give anything to our listeners, it's more of like these abstract mechanics and abstract building blocks. In terms of how folks can help me, well, tell me your story. If you have an interesting story, if you resonated with some of the stuff that I've said, if you consider yourself a hard worker who's looking to do great work, please reach out to me. Send me a DM. Tell me just a little bit about your story. Request a phone call. I take phone calls with everyone who's willing to talk to me. So I'll give you 5, 10, 15 minutes. I want to hear it. And, I have no preconceived expectations. I'm not looking to make a sales pitch to anyone. But if I'm looking to network with high value people. So if that sounds like yourself, please do reach out to me.
Oh, I like that. And it's very much in keeping with the podcast guest I had on last week, Janicia Aliurora, who is an inspirational Asian leader. She's a coach, really changing the game. Her mother told her to turn her mess into her message when she was on the 10th floor, about to jump. That's her story. And so there's something in everyone, and you've just got to find it, right? And track to it. So wrapping up the podcast, let's end on a light and fun note. This is my signature question on the Grit Files. It's easy peasy compared to all the stuff we've chatted about already, Mikey. And that is, if we got a peek into your closet there behind the wonderfully painted yellow door, for those of you that aren't tuned into the photo to see this, If there was a pair of footwear in your closet that best personified you, who you are, represented your values, what are we looking at?
Give, give, give. And that's how I build relationships. Like, I think that's a defining factor in terms of what helped me grow as an individual. Gave me so many opportunities, allowed me to work with such incredible people, is that I never ask. I always give value, and that's how I built relationships.
Yeah, if we got a chance to peek into your closet and there was a pair of
Right.
footwear there that represented Mikey Perez, your personality, your values, what pair of shoes are we looking at and why
Oh, you want
do
me to
they
name a pair?
represent you? Yeah, and describe them.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said like something. Go
No,
ahead.
it's still all a good answer. Hey, it's I can clearly see that you are a giver, and that's wonderful. We need more people like this in the world. But we're
Yeah,
curious about
just
what's in your
not the right answer
closet.
to the question. I
Well,
understand.
no, different question, different answer, but that's okay. We're gonna probe. We're going in. We're in your closet. We're on the floor. We're looking at the shoes, Mikey. What's in there?
I don't have too many shoes. I've
Okay.
got my Nike Air Maxes that are my favorite. I like to buy a really expensive pair of shoes that's perfect for me, and that's how I look at it. I don't have too much variety. I've got specifics, but I have a pair of dress shoes because I have to wear them because a family member eventually gets married and I have to go buy dress clothes. But I don't often. I'm a very casual kind of guy. I mean, just look at like what tech nerds wear. They wear t-shirts. Exactly. Forget about my shoes for just a second. I will go and I'll buy 8 of the same shirt, and I'll go to Cotton On. I'll just pick the same shirt, buy one of every color, and I'm good for the next few months. And then I'll do the same with the pants. You know, I've got okay. So you never get a straight answer from me. You never get a simple answer.
But that's half the fun of this. You never know where our guests are going to go. I had one male guest on from LA who works at LA Tech, and I asked him what pair of shoes and that he wears and what kind of styles. And he said he likes stilettos. He gets them custom made to fit his size, and they make him feel tall and wonderful. And so you never know. This is why I asked the question. So go on. You said so you got a lot of ideas.
Oh, I had something I just in my mind. Oh, that was interesting. Yeah, exactly. I was saying that to me, time is a currency. It's how I show respect to people. It's how I show affection. I give people my time, and I expect people to treat me the same. Time is my currency, and time is so precious, and we only have a limited amount of energy in a given day. So, you know, I try to keep decisions for things that really get to me to where I want to get to. And this is part of where I'm trying to say is maybe I need to kind of have a healthier balance. Maybe I need to start buying fancier clothing and spending more time shopping. But I get anxiety when I go shopping. I'm like, this is such a waste of my time. I go crazy, right? And it just makes me feel like I'm just so different than the average person because there's a reason why consumerism, is the multi-billion-dollar industry here in the US. It's because people go, oh, I can't wait to wake up and go shopping. And after 20 minutes, I'm like, get me the fuck out of here, right? So, it comes down to, you ask me what kind of shoes I have. You're asking the wrong person. I'll buy really nice, beautiful Nike shoes. That's it. I can show you them. They're cool.
There you go. That's all good. And none of us needs to bend to anybody else's ideology of who we're supposed to be. We all get to make those choices, and that's how it should be. And so with that, let's do a wrap of the podcast. So Mikey Perez, journalist, software engineer, serial entrepreneur, we are delighted that you were on our show today, and we hope that you had some fun on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope I gave some value to your listeners.
I think so. You had some really powerful statements there. And I'm particularly honed in on the statement that you made about how companies will pay you to have a salary essentially to prevent you from living out your dreams.
Pay you to forget about your dreams.
It's wild.
And the more, you got a bigger dream, the more they pay you to forget about it. Okay.
That's right. So with that, thank you, Mikey.
Thank you for your time.
Don't forget to follow Grit Daily News as well as me, your host, Loralyn Mears, everywhere on social media. And how about throwing 4 or 5 stars our way if you're listening to Apple or Spotify? Subscribe to our show.
And how about that fantastic intro by Touch Circle?